a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm interviewing someone that I met almost exactly 4 years ago to the day. And it's very interesting when you meet folks that you really connect with and you sense their energy and their sense of duty. And I think that's always very interesting because you can really get a good read on someone that's, they know what they want and they know where they're going. And I think this person is a great interview to talk about not only running for political office, being a sergeant in a police force, his background, what got him there, but then the reasons why he's doing these things. Joining me today live in studio is Dr. Tre Pennie. Dr. Tre, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Glad to have you on, and I just think it's awesome what you've been working toward. When we met, I guess it was about 4 years ago in a few days, I was impressed by the stuff that you were working on and your direction and your commitment. Tell me more about you as a person and your background.
Yes, I'm Dr. Tre Pennie. I'm a doctor of education from Texas Tech University, a U.S. Army veteran, and a 21-year Dallas Police Sergeant. I'm currently running for U.S. Congress in Texas, Congressional District 30, and I'm running to address 28 years of failed socioeconomic policy, including the lack of economic development, failing schools, and a high crime rate. I'm uniquely qualified to address the issues in this district based on my experiences, my background, and my understanding of the dynamics impacting the community. I grew up in the inner city of Houston, Texas. I came up during a time when, police, there was this animosity that existed between the police and the black community, predominantly black community. And to make a long story short, when we see a lot of the parallels that are happening today with the anti-police sentiment and different things that are going on in society. My community was a little bit worse than that. It was more of a, we were anti-government, anti-police, anti-everything. And, I was one of these young advocates. I believed in that. That was something that I thought was the norm growing up because everybody was doing it. That's what it was, And, the reality was, although we had this anti-police sentiment, we were being victimized at a higher rate than anywhere else in the country. In fact, this was, we were being victimized at a rate higher than it was in L.A., and L.A. had criminal gangs at the time. Now, so I grew up in Houston, Texas. I don't know if I got that part in. But, the crazy thing about this is, and when I tell people about this, about how bad the community was, George H.W. Bush launched his war on drugs from the park across the street from my grandmother's house back then.
Are you serious?
Yeah. That was my first. Let's say that was my first impression of the Bushes. Then that was like the first thing I even knew about a presidency or anything like that. I just thought it was funny because I was young back then. I think I was like 12 or 13, and he launched his war on drugs from the park in my neighborhood called Carver Park, and they block everything out. You know how they do when the president come in. But I thought it was funny because the houses right across the street were like the dope houses, right? So, you had all the drug users and whatever sitting on buckets in the front yard, watching the president, and he was launching his war on drugs. It was just funny just to see that whole thing play out. And we sitting in a ditch, kind of, looking at this whole thing, and I just, that whole parallel was just crazy then, and then to see where we are now. It's like, to go through all that and the community breakdown was bad then, and we just hadn't seen very much progress in a lot of those communities. It's still the same. So, but anyway, going back to where I was, I grew up in the inner city, predominantly black community. I was a young advocate, hating the police, didn't want the police there, and I say everyone's an advocate until they become a victim. And at the age of 16, I witnessed my cousin get killed in front of me the day before her wedding day, and that changed my life. That was like the catalyst.
How old were you?
16.
How old was your cousin?
23.
What happened?
Family event. It was actually her fiance's bachelor party, and you know how the family do. They, you know, get the drinking, and you know everybody, you know, everybody go to acting a fool, and you know, she wasn't even involved in it. Actually, you know, when they got into a fight, her fiance got into a fight with one of the family friends. My aunt went down and got my cousin out the house, you know, out my grandmother's house to come get her fiance, and she went down there to get him, and you know, the guy pulled out the shotgun and shot, you know, and hit her in the chest. So, you know, I was, you know,
and you watched that whole thing happen?
Yeah, I caught the end of it. You know, I was actually walking through the trail, you know, going to the, cause my family lived on this dead end road. So as I was coming through the trail, I you know, I heard the shot, and my whole family's on this street. So in my mind, I'm like, you know, I'm going to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And as I start running through the trail, the guy that did it, the family friend that we all knew, he ran past me. So I'm not thinking anything of it. I just go straight to where it was. And when I got there to my uncle's house, you know, my cousin was laying in the front yard. And, you know, like I said, the police, these guys showed up, and none of the officers looked like me, man. I'm telling you, that was like, I say the most impressionable time of my life. You know, it was the most impactful time as well. Those guys didn't look like me, but they treated my family with respect. And you know, my family was the one that didn't want to cooperate with everything. You know, we just had this thing in the culture, within the culture, about just not cooperating with the police, and you know, they didn't, and that was just kind of like the part that showed me the fallacy and everything that I had believed growing up. And that forced me to do the most controversial thing anybody could have done at that time, to get out. And
what'd you do?
Joined the Army.
Wow. What happened when you said, "Hey, I'm joining the Army"? What happened then?
Oh man, everything shut down. I mean, just, you know, family shunned me. Just, you know, friends. You know, all my friends like said I sold out. You know. If you think about it, you know, there was this movie, Boys in the Hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a part in there, a line where Lawrence Fishburne says, "There's no place for a black man in a white man's army." So the whole community kind of, you know, that was kind of like the thing, you know. I mean, obviously we had veterans in the community, but for my generation, you know, it was like, nah, man, there's no place for a black man in a white man's army. So, but I had no options. You know, there was no way out. I mean, nobody talked about going to college or going. You know, I can't go off to get no scholarship to college. Look at me, I'm 5'6". I can't go play professional basketball. You know, but no. But the reality was there was nothing. There was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do, and you know, I was trying to get out. And at the same time, I had another conflict that was happening in my life as well. I had my teenage girlfriend that was also pregnant. So this was a thing, and you know, so when I go talk to these when I talk to a lot of these conservative groups that are the real pro-life, they're real hardcore in their beliefs, and you know, they'll ask me about, you know, why does the black community, you know, why is that like abortion is such a big thing, you know? And I was like, you know, that's all anybody knew. That's it. And for me being a young father, man, that was, you know, I remember going to my girlfriend at the time, you know, going to her parents and trying to convince them not to abort my son, you know, not to abort the child, because she was a kid too. She was 15, I was 16. You know, we was kids, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And but I knew that I wanted to do something better. I didn't want the kid to have my kind of life, you know. I wanted to do something better. And I was able to convince this family that I was going to take care of this child. I was going to join the military. I was going to leave. So you had all this stuff happening at once. And like I said, I joined the Army, and they let her keep the baby. You know, we got married. I got married when I was 17.
Wow, you got married at 17?
Yeah. She was 16. I got married and went to the Army, and you know, I brought her with me for a little while. You know, keep in mind, you know, I stayed in the field a lot. So, here she is. She's 17 years old. She out here with a baby, and, she trying to raise this baby, and I ain't never there. So I come out the field one day, and she packed up and went back home. So I was stationed in Hawaii at the time. So, yeah, so it was like, man, it was tough. It was tough. But, no, the reality was, if you really think about it, there's a lot of these behaviors that are happening in the community. We've never addressed it. I mean, the system's still the same. It's the same system we've been having for years. But I just thank God that I was able to work my way through that whole situation. I kept my son, and right now I'm proud to say that my son's a 25-year-old microbiologist who actually studies DNA for pregnant women. Look at the irony in that.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's a great, a lot of times we are in these programs and cycles and patterns, like you're saying, like in communities, where we have something happen, but we just replay it instead of changing it up. Like your son that's amazing. He's studying that. Yeah. Could be a much different situation. Let me ask you, though, going back to being enlisting in the Army and doing that, did you get any support from your family, or did it take you to come back and be done, and then people started supporting you, or was there any support that ever came from that?
No, that wasn't no support. Actually, my grandmother. Really all I really had my grandmother anyway. I came from a broken family. Didn't have, my father, and my father was out there in the streets, on drugs or whatever. And my mother, she kind of, she kind of didn't. I was at that age where, she kind of couldn't really control me, so she didn't want me there. And my grandmother was there. She took me. So my greatest influence was my grandmother, and she supported me. She saw something in me that nobody else did. She would always say that I was a special kid and I was going to be something, And, I just wish she could have seen me now,
That's awesome. Grandmothers can be so special. And it's interesting, though. It's interesting how it takes a lot of gumption, motivation, and perseverance, though, to do something that goes against the belief system or the programming of how we're raised.
Right. Absolutely. And it more so, like I said, there are a lot of these cultural mores in the black community that we, systematically haven't broke through. We just have not. It's just, these are just things that exist, everything from just, our political beliefs or the way that, the worldview, the way that we view things. Everything was all racist. The government's doing this, the government's doing that. It's all the white man this, white man that. But, if you think about it, we were creating a lot of our own circumstances. That was the thing, man, I used to hate. I remember I used to have to go to my grandmother. So back then, the Catholic Church used to be where people would go to get the welfare, get the free cheese and eggs and stuff, Mm-hmm. Man, I used to hate standing in that line. As a kid, I remember doing that. And I used to always say, man, I ain't never, I'm never going to, this welfare thing ain't for me. No way. You got to stand in the line like this. Mm-hmm. So, that had a negative impact on me early on. So I was always looking for a way to get out, man. And I always found, like relief. I've always been somewhat of a smart kid, I used to read just because, it was like that was just something that, that was instilled in me early, just to read, because I didn't have a world, believe it or not, I had never left my community. That's all I knew was what was right there. I didn't even go to the south side I lived on the north side of Houston. I didn't even go to the south side. It just wasn't a thing, everything was like right there. So I didn't really have a cultural understanding or a environmental understanding of what was around me. What was the world like? I just didn't have a worldview. And my escape was really the books, reading about, just reading about some of used to read a lot of the civil rights stuff, that was going on, like some of the revolutionary stuff. So the worldview was I was tapped into that real strong, and that was kind of what was going on in the community. But I would pick up on ideas about self-empowerment and doing it yourself, and how the government trying to hold you down, and I'm like, okay, well, the government's doing this, we need to get out of this then. We need to find a way around it. So I was always trying to get a way out. I said before I was gone, as soon as I got a chance, and I remember my cousin, man, she was I was kind of like the pretty kid. So, like.
I love that.
So my cousin used to, the one that, Jackie, her name was Jackie, She used to have long hair, believe it or not, right? She used to have long hair. She used to braid my hair all the time, and she used to always talk about how she was going to leave.
That's painful. It's I know that the feeling of that, and obviously the emotional connection is still very real and can be very raw. It's interesting. It's like when you look at your life and coming out of the military. So you came out of the military. How many years did you spend out there?
Did 4 years.
4 years.
4 years in the Army, yeah.
You came back, and did you continue the marriage, or did you move on, or?
No. That I ended up, me and my childhood sweetheart ended up getting we got a divorce. We moved on. My first job was Dallas Police. I actually met my wife. So my current wife I met in Hawaii. Her dad was in the military as well. Yeah, he was in the Marines, And so I met her, and we got married, and I asked her to come back with me, and she came back, and we've been together ever since. So.
And so there you are. So you're back, and then you move up to Dallas, and you start working at the Dallas Police Department.
Dallas Police Department, yeah.
So how was that? I'm sure that was kind of bittersweet, knowing that the family dynamic and that sort of thing. But walking in those doors and starting that career, how did that feel at the time? Was there empowerment?
Yes. I knew that I wanted to be. So when I left to go to the Army, I knew that I wanted to be a police officer. I just didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what was that route. So, but I know that I needed college. So what I would do was I would take college in between my deployment schedule, when I was in the military. And so I had enough hours to be able to apply for Dallas. I knew I couldn't go home because, my family is what it is. I got, we got problems in the family, so I couldn't be police there. So I wanted to be Dallas Police. I mean, Dallas was like still a premier police department. But I wanted to be Dallas Police. I mean, the feds was poaching Dallas back then. I mean, it was really, like I said, a top-notch agency. And, I applied, and thank God they selected me. They let me in. I had enough college credit hours, and I jumped in. And that was really about, my experiences early on were very impactful in how I wanted to, have that same level of impact on another community, on another family. What those officers did for me, when that happened with my cousin, I wanted to do that for somebody else's family. Whether or not those officers know what they did impacted my life, they did. So.
Yeah, so you saw the other side of that whole situation, whereas everybody else was upset or trying to avoid it. You saw how they were trying to help, and that really resonated with you. So how long have you been on the force? You're a sergeant, but how long have you been on the force? And
21 years.
21 years?
21 years, yeah. Oh, yeah, 21 years. I've been, like I said, I've been patrol, been at all the stations. I've kind of, I've been a community advocate for a long time, just working to bridge the gap between police and the community, because I understood it. Like I said, a lot of these dynamics that, and Dallas, just like any other agency, at the time, there was we didn't really have a community policing philosophy, like early on. That was like this them against us mentality. That was kind of like what I came from. But I didn't want to bring that to the police department. I wanted to, show people that I came up under, like, hey, this is how we can engage the community. This is how you let them know who we are, and you get buy-in from them. And then later on, like I said, we start seeing the culture change, the policing culture change, to where they start developing those philosophies of community policing, and it's just a lot easier to do the job. It was just easy for me. I mean, I didn't, it was just normal for me to want to love on the community. That's what I do.
And so I'm assuming that you've seen so many times, day after day, month after month, year after year, just to give back and to be connected. And I'm sure that it was nice to be a voice of reason, I'm sure, in your situation. And I'm sure you had to overcome situations with dealing with people that were similar to your upbringing, right? And trying to help them to see that you weren't trying to hurt them, you were trying to help them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But you got to understand, look, you can reach everybody. I don't care who you try. You can be police. You can be the best police in the world. Some people, you just, some people you just gotta take them to jail. They want to go, they just want to go. There's nothing you can do to keep them from wanting to go to jail. You just gotta take them. I just come with it. So, but I try my best to to influence upon other young officers at to try to kind of understand the community. There's this understanding that culturally there's this distrust, and we got to try to break through that. You break through it by talking to them, trying to understand. You got to be there in order for them to kind of trust the police, and we're just now getting to that point. I mean, you fast forward all these years, I'm gonna say over the last decade, maybe we've really grown a little bit more conscious that you have to engage the public. You can't be them against us type thing.
Right.
And it's gone well. Like I said, that's why I had a problem with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and the shooting, that whole deal that happened, because Dallas didn't have that type of relationship with the community. You got to, like I said, we had worked through those kinks years in the past. So to get to that point to where you had this narrative that was going across the country, everywhere else, it just shouldn't have been here in Dallas. There was no way. I mean, there was no reason for us to do it. There was no reason for that type of radicalized protest to happen here in Dallas.
Let me ask you, when that all took place earlier this year, a lot of people were talking about how they felt like a lot of it was transplanted and it wasn't a total Dallas movement. Is that your feelings or no?
Yeah. No, I think a big part of that was, it was definitely organized. We saw it in 2016. I mean, that was when it was really organized, 2016, with the shooting attack, where 5 police officers got killed.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Back in 2016.
2016, yeah. July
I didn't
7th,
know that was Black Lives Matter. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a Black Lives Matter protest.
I didn't know that.
Was, unfortunately, I saw the wave. This is when I was working on my doctorate degree with Texas Tech. I was already looking at these radicalized trends online, and basically my research was about mitigating the outcomes of shooting attacks on college and school campuses. So I was looking at how these radicalized groups were basically inciting individuals to violence. Right? They were basically radicalizing young people, right, with these narratives, these agendas, and they understood. This group, this Black Lives Matter group, understood social media. They understood how to manipulate minds with what they were doing with their agenda. And so I'm researching this whole thing. So I saw Ferguson happen, burned down Ferguson twice. Then move on to Baltimore, and I saw that wave coming here to Dallas. And they were trying to organize a Black Lives Matter protest. And I'm like, no, we don't need to do it. There's no reason for us to do that here. I was reaching out to, because the church. A lot of people don't know that the Black church helped them organize it. So I reached out to the church to say, hey, don't do that protest here. That's, there's no reason for us to do it. We can host a town hall, come in, talk about issues, whatever we need to fix, we'll fix it. And they're like, no, Sarge, they want to protest. They want to do it. So they host this thing, and they do it at night. Now, keep in mind, like I told you before, I got to rewind this whole thing, right? As a young advocate, that's what the radicals used to do with us. They used to have the young people, they organized the protests at night, so the radicals would come out, and the kids can hide in the darkness, the young people hide in the darkness, and just act a fool. And you don't know who's who. Well, now I knew exactly what these guys were doing, because that's an old tactic, right? So I'm saying, look, if you guys want to protest, why don't you do it at 2:00 in the morning? Why you got to wait until 7 at night to do it? And they knew what was going to happen. So when the shooting attack happens in Dallas, 5 police officers get killed. You got all those guys that step back like, whoa, I had nothing to do with that. No. Well, my thing is, if it's your party, you host it, you should be held liable, right? If you have a party at your house, people come in, get hurt, you're not liable for that?
Yeah, you're liable for it.
Well, that's the way that should have happened. That should have, those individuals should have been held accountable. But, they let it go, and I tried to do what I needed to do. I wanted to break the movement. I wanted to break that whole radicalized agenda. That was a catalyst for me filing the federal lawsuit against Black Lives Matter and all the radicals and all that, because, I saw the agenda, and I did not want any other officers to be subject to any of these type of radicalized attacks. Hashtag kill police. I mean, that, come on, there's no place for that. What is that? But unfortunately, like I said, we lost officers behind that. And
I was at the memorial. I can't believe that was, wow, it was several years ago. I was at that memorial. That was powerful.
Man.
But
the nation came together. I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, we had people from all over the world here in Dallas. I mean, that touched so many people, and I'm very appreciative of the support that we received. Now, keeping in mind, I'm also a community advocate, a law enforcement advocate, and I was over the Dallas Fallen Officer Foundation. I'm still over the Dallas Fallen Officer Foundation. My foundation is involved in relief efforts for fallen officers and officers killed in line of duty, and that just threw me right in the mix of this thing, and it was just very impactful. But it's if you think about it, the government didn't do what it was supposed to do as it relates, and that's why I'm going to talk about this in a little bit politically. Why I decided to go do some of this, because the government didn't do its role. It didn't. It never addressed these radicalized agendas. It never addressed the fact that social media is able to be used to attack American interests. None of that stuff got none of that stuff got addressed. The DOJ didn't do its job. The Congress didn't do its job in regulating these platforms, and the courts. The courts didn't want to do Congress's job. So, that's why I'm here today.
We actually did a bunch of interviews. I did a bunch of interviews on the show at that memorial service. It was very impactful and sad that we had to get there, and also kind of sad that nothing came out of that in a different way. But I think you're here to try to change that. And so let's talk about that. Let's segue a bit, because now besides being a sergeant at the Dallas Police Department, you're running for U.S. Congress.
Yes.
Wow, that's a big undertaking.
Definitely. You know what? And I did it specifically in this district that I had a connection to. So if you think about it, there are 435 U.S. House seats. 28% of them are majority minority districts, right? So approximately 121 of them are majority minority districts. These are districts that politically, as Republicans, we talk about these districts having being run down, high crime, low economic development, failing schools, those type of things, and they're heavy Democrat-run areas, right? But the reality is, Republicans don't even run in those districts. They don't even try. They have no infrastructure. There's nothing. So when I decided to run, I couldn't get support from either side, from Democrat or Republican. Nobody wanted to see me there. But I had a connection to the community. I just feel that I would do. I couldn't run anywhere else. This is like I understand the community. I understand the interests. I understand what's not only being who I am as, a doctor of education, a military veteran, 21-year Dallas police, a community advocate, not just being that. The person I'm running against was a 28-year incumbent, the greatest argument for term limits. There's no reason for nobody to. There's no reason for me not to run against her. I can say that.
Well, I agree with you right there. I think that there needs to be limits. And to me also, it's like, sometimes it's like, okay, eventually there has to be some sort of a grade. I mean, eventually there has to be some sort of a grade. You remember when we were in high school and remember in college, you got your grades in the mail. Remember?
That's right.
Why can't we get some sort of grade that says, okay, they voted on this, they did this, they made these changes. But it's like, to me, we're seeing people that are going in there and dying in office year after year. And what's changing? Nothing's changing.
And you know what, to be honest with you, half of these older career politicians don't even read these bills. They don't read them. And I don't know if you even pay attention to any of these bills. A lot of them are 400 and 500 pages long. You know what?
Yes.
The Patriot Act was 800 pages long initially. Who in the world read that? Who read it?
5 people.
But that was the fallacy in it, because the federal government had to come. I mean, the courts. After lawsuits, there was a lot of stuff in the Patriot Act about intrusions on personal liberties, where they can spying on your phone and just all kind of stuff. And the courts had to go in and pull a lot of that stuff out. So what we have in the current Patriot Act is not what was originally, in the original thing. And I say that to say that, there's a fallacy in government when you put people in office and they're able to stay there as long as they want to be. I mean, they become disconnected from the community. They become politicians. They become bought off by the special interests. There's so many different things that happen. That's the reason why we have term limits on our president, so that a president can get in and get bought out by foreign interests or whatever. Everything else. There's no reason to not have term limits for congressional leaders.
No, I totally agree with you, because I think we've seen that without it, you're right. It's just the disconnect, and I remember Immanuel Kant. The concept of the veil of ignorance principle. You can't. Yes. We can't. We're basically making laws, and these people are okaying the laws because they don't have to follow them. They never have to. They're thinking, okay, I'll be here for as long as I'm here. This will never apply to me. You know?
It's funny you bring that up, because you hear all these arguments about this Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare. None of those congressional leaders, they got free medical. They can go wherever they want to go.
I know.
That's but they want to talk about you and your insurance and it was these illegal mandates. Nobody really wants to talk about the monster in the room, which is really the insurance companies. Mm-hmm. Healthcare shouldn't be for profit, but that's a whole nother discussion. The bottom line is that's where this whole thing stems from. These congressional leaders don't want you to have what they have, mm-hmm. but they want to dictate what's good for you. And I think that's a problem. How can we be a representative democracy if the people that are representing you are not going in and representing your interests?
And them thinking, okay, and realizing to a degree, okay, what I pass, because there are term limits, I'm going to eventually have to take and use, and it's not going to be me in this little bubble where I don't have to worry about that. Because it's like if you had to pass law that you would actually have to follow eventually, would that be a different law passed?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everyone, you should be looking down the road. You should be looking at how is this going to impact you if you're in that seat, right? You see a lot of them don't even think about the whole Medicare thing, right? They're not even considering their impact on Social Security or Medicare. Why? Because they're concentrating on pensions. They're going to have a lifetime pension. They're going to have lifetime health care. It's just not the same. They're mm-hmm. completely disconnected from what's happening to real people in real life. So
I think that's interesting. And I also think it's interesting when people go and run in different areas around the country when they're not really from there in that area, or they claim that they were born there, but they come back after they've been gone for 25, 30 years, whatever. I always find that's very interesting. It's always kind of like the low-lying fruit. But, I respect the fact that you actually are here, been here, running here. And there's a lot of people that don't do that. There's a lot of people that'll claim New York or claim wherever and go back to wherever because there's a seat open or there's an easier way in. And I know that easier is in quotes. Yeah, no, but at the same point, you're working it from here from the standpoint of being boots on the ground for years, being here and seeing what this area really needs.
Yeah, I love the people, man. I just love people, period, and to understand the plight. I can go on and on talking about stories, but just to understand the plight of what people go from and what they come through. Like I got this one story that's a real situation. Where I remember driving through, there was an apartment complex we had down south, like around Keith area. That was a really bad complex, had a lot of shootings come out. And there was also at this time this relationship between the police and the community. They didn't like the police. Mm-hmm. But as police, we like to be proactive. We like to drive through and be on top of calls when they happen. And I remember driving through this apartment complex, and I saw this kid sitting on the curb. And I drove by my squad car, and I saw him. He was sitting down, had his head tucked between his legs, sitting on the curb. And I let my window down and said, "Hey, little man, everything all right?" And he raised his head up and looked at me and said, "I'm just tired." So I'm kind of thinking something wrong. So I get out the car, throw my car in park, get out. "Little man, everything all right? What's wrong?" He said, "I'm tired. I'm tired of running." And I said, "Well, what you running from?" He said, "I'm tired of running behind my friends. They got bikes. I don't got one." And I look up and I see his buddies riding off on their bikes. And I said, "All right, little man, well, why you don't have a bike?" He said, "My mama couldn't afford to give me one." So I said, "Well, hold on a second. I'll be right back." So I jumped in my squad car. And at the time, that was a Toys R Us used to be over there off of Redbird, Camp Wisdom. And I flew down, code 3, go down there, and ran in and grabbed the best bike I could find, and I run out, get it real quick, throw it in the back of the squad car, and I drove back. And I'm praying the whole time that this kid's still going to be here. And when I get there, true enough, he's still sitting there with his head down. And that's a lot of time to be sitting with your head down.
Mm-hmm.
But I get out the car, and I get a little dude with the bike, and he asked me, was this his? And I was like, yeah, it's yours. And he looked at me, just the joy on his face just really made, it gave me more pleasure to see him smile, And he jumped on his bike and he took off and caught up with his friends. And I think about that kid's situation in relation to what's happening to that district, to District 30. District 30 is that kid sitting on the curb.
Mm-hmm.
Every other district around is taking off, economic development, education-wise, crime, especially as related to crime, they have a control everywhere else, but not in this district. There's the highest volume of crime. And I just see, this is the district that's sitting on the curb, and it's time for this district to have a bike, to be able to take off and catch up with everybody else. So, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to provide that so we can catch up. We got to have somebody that understands these new ideas, that can see a future, and I can see it.
Let me ask you a question, Tre, because I know how, my whole life I put myself out there, and you're going to get great response, and you're going to have people that love you, and you change their life, and, you put yourself out there, and you're going to get some not so nice response.
Yeah, of course.
How have you stayed motivated through this, through putting yourself out there on this election? How do you stay motivated? How do you just say, keep refocusing and keep pushing forward? How do you do that? Because I know there's a lot of folks out there listening to this show right now, and they're saying, hey, I might not be running for U.S. Congress, but I'm really working hard, and I'm scared, and I know I got a voice, and I'm just trying to help people. How do you keep motivated, even if it's scary? What do you do?
No, it is hard. But I know that there's a greater calling, right? I remember I was talking to this lady the other day, and she was telling me, Tre, you have just this amazing story, and you could reach so many people. And she was telling me, like, she was talking about Moses in the Bible, right? And she was saying how Moses didn't have he had a stuttering problem, so he didn't speak to the people. Who spoke for him was his brother Aaron. And she said that Aaron went and told the people that what God's, what Moses was there to do. And she was like, Tre, you need an Aaron. And I was like, I don't have an Aaron. I don't have anybody to speak for me. I only know my experience. And she said, no. She said, you do have an Aaron. And she said, Aaron is every contact that you've made, that you've had a relationship with, or you've made a contact with. Those people are going to spread the message. Those people are going to be the ones that are going to say that you're there to represent their interests. And I say that simply to say that what motivates me is to be able to know that I'm impacting people, that I'm touching people, and somebody's going to take something that I've done and use it for the benefit of somebody else.
That's powerful.
I like to believe so. I want to make my little small mark as whatever I can to improve this country. I mean, we're going through a lot right now. I know if we look at this political thing, everything in the media right now is about the presidency. It's about the president. You got people in communities that think that once they get, President Trump out, that their world's going to change. And the reality is it doesn't happen that way. That's not how politics work, right? That's why we have three separate branches of government. We have the executive branch, that's the president, right? We have the legislative, that's Congress, and judicial, that's the courts, okay? They're all separate. That's why we have this checks and balances system. The president can only sign bills. The president can only sign executive orders. Everything else, all policies have to come from Congress, meaning you got to have people in Congress representing your interests, people in Congress creating policy, bills that can go through to actually improve your lifestyle, improve issues in your community. And wherever they run afoul, wherever they come, there are constitutional related issues, then people file lawsuits. And that's what gets the courts involved. And we got to be able to, I think we need to educate the public a little bit more just so they can know that you have to be paying attention to your interests. The most important seats or your local, state, and federal seats. I mean, this is, I get it. The presidency is very important. I mean, that's the figurehead for the country. But the reality is what impacts our life, the issues that impact you, or your taxes. I mean, I can talk all day long about your taxes, because people want their money. Mm-hmm. And you got to think, who's creating bills to help you save money so you can live your life. That's going to be coming from Congress. It's going to be coming from your state legislature. Those are the people that you need to be focused on getting in the office because that's about your livelihood. I don't know about you, how you feel about your money, but I'm, I want to live.
I totally agree. I mean, exactly. It's about who's going to affect your bottom line, whether it's, financial, social, but it's all based on Congress. It's all based on people right here. And you're right. A lot of times people see the figurehead as the end-all, be-all of life's existence, and it's just not. It's not.
It's not. I mean, I've seen this so long. I mean, just, if you think about it, majority of the black community and the message that was being put out there, the black community believed that when President Obama was running, that he was going to be the end all, like everything was going to be fixed then. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, now that he's out, you still have these same arguments, these same concerns are happening right now in the community. And now they're saying, okay, now we need to get Trump out and get Biden in mm-hmm. so we can get these things fixed. And I'm like, guys, it's bigger than that. It's not the presidency. It's really not. You have to look at, you really have to look at these other seats. You got to look at your congressional leaders to see what are they doing? What kind of bills are they passing? Why can't they get anything done? Because it's so partisan. It's so Democrat, Republican. I mean, that's why, look, our system is broken. If you look at that, the system is broken. Mm-hmm. Because, and I listened to a lot of these candidates. So nobody wanted to support me in my district. And thank God that I was able to get people outside to get behind me. But mm-hmm. The reality is, okay, if you're not in the majority in the House, you're 218, you're the majority body, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to be putting forth the bills. I don't care who you are, you're not going to get anything done unless you're in the majority party. So if you're in the minority, if you are, if you have less seats, so right now the Republicans have less seats, all these seats that they talking about that they put money in to unseat these, to win these elections. The bottom line is nothing will get done because they still have to work with somebody who's in the majority. If the Democrat Party wins again, mm-hmm. they still got to work with them to get a bill authored. So there's nothing that a lone congressional or congressman can do without having bipartisan policy. It has to be bipartisan. Mm-hmm. And so, unfortunately, our politics right now in America are just polarized, and everybody's going their own different direction. Fortunately, I'm not doing that. I just look. I'm conservative in my ideology, but I want to get things done for my people.
Do you see that there could be a chance? We have a few minutes left. That there could be a chance that we could overcome that as a country.
I think we will. I think we're gonna have to get some safeguards in place. Nobody wants to touch the media, but we have to realize that the media is just they're free fall right now, and the media is competing with messaging on social media. Mm-hmm. So you have regular media who they have to sensationalize to get people away from social media because social media is becoming the new narrative, right? And unfortunately, as long as we continue to have that, you're going to have this partisan divide. I mean, it's just, that's where the money's at. That's what people, that's how they run these campaigns. Oh, man, let me tell you something. I can talk mm-hmm. all day long about that. But the money in these elections, man, you wouldn't even believe it. You wouldn't believe the type of money that are poured into these elections. So these candidates, before they even get into office, many of them are bought and paid for by the special interests. You just got to look at these elections. I thank God that I didn't have any I didn't have any of that nonsense going on. No PACs. I didn't do any of that. I got my money from people, individuals. I had over 6,200 donors that supported me, and we've been able to run a legitimate campaign on, nice. $250,000.
Nice.
So that's just people. That's just people supporting me.
See, I just wish, I know we have just a little bit of time left, but I just wish there was limits on spending, limits on investment with these elections. Like, I wish there was only a certain amount of money that could be, and they had to have a CPA and everybody in the background and accountant to be able to validate it. Then I'd love to be able to have a real four-party system. I think that would be awesome. Like a real four-party system. That's what I want, is that I want all people to be able, and like on these presidential debates, this example would be all four parties would be participating, and there would be in the TV, coverage would be the same for each person and all that stuff. But like as far as in the U.S., as far as where you're running, I would love to be able to have it where everybody gets. You can only take in a certain amount. That's your limit. That's it. That's done. And then if you're, and then on TV, everybody gets exact same amount of time. And that's what we do, and you can't get any more money, and there's, the PACs aren't, all that stuff. And that would make it interesting.
It would.
At that point in time, it's like watching football and knowing that nobody's taking any money in the back end, knowing that it's all legitimate game. This would be a legitimate game at that point.
There are some candidates that have raised $8 million already. Now, you tell me what you spent $8 million. I'm in. I see it. I'm in here. I know what takes to run a campaign. And I thank God that I was able to educate myself. But what are you spending $8 million on? What? You just got to ask yourself. What? I get it. Television is expensive. But if you're not running television, that money, all that's just it's just.
Where's it going?
Yeah, it's people. Just paying people. It's just, everybody got their hand in this thing. Look, I've turned down a lot of so-called strategists from being involved with my campaign because I didn't want to run that. I didn't want to run that kind of campaign. Mm-hmm. Where they're going to take, they're going to raise all this money, but they're taking, 80-90% of it to do what they need to do. And that's our politics have just, we lost control of it. We lost control over politics in this country.
Well, I'm praying that we can see a shift. I'm just glad that, you've actually taken the time and care to run, and that's what matters. And I'd like to see you be very successful.
And it's looking good. It's looking good. I got some early polling from last week.
Okay.
And I think this is going to be the race that a lot of people need to pay attention to. It's going to get a lot of people attention because this just so happened to be the race that nobody cared about, but it's going to be the one that a lot of people are going to pay attention to after it's over.
And, being involved with that's pretty powerful, That's pretty powerful. You were like, I don't know if I want to be in that kind of deal, but at least, you have to admit it's interesting. But, yeah, I think we're ready, and I know I'm ready to have some folks in Congress that actually care about what we have to say or who we are or how we feel and about the regular person out there, And I think most of the time everybody feels a little small because, certain things apply, don't apply, and, do as I say, not as I do kind of stuff. And I think just that's getting tiring. And I think that's what's having a problem. I think that's where the apathy is coming from, is that it's getting tiring. And I think we're all ready to have a change. And if it begins with you and a few other people that are running, that's a good start.
Well, hey, if God say the same, this is going to be it. This is going to be, this is where the change is going to start. This is going to be an opportunity for us to really fix a lot of the problems that we've had in this country. Because, look, I'm going to speak about them. Look, if nothing else, I'm going to write the bill. I'm going to be the one. I'm doing everything I can to put forward legislation to really fix. You can go talk to a lot of these candidates, and I hate to say it, but a lot of them they're so shallow in their thinking. A lot of them are talking from partisan talking points, and it's not really about ideas. We've lost this concept of being idealists and knowing which direction that we want our country to go in. We lost so much control over it, and I think we got to get back to the center.
I agree with you. And Dr. Tre, I can't wait to have you back on. I hope you'll come back on.
Of course, always.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Okay, much luck, and I've already voted for you, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'm getting the word out, too, so thank you so much. Can't wait to have you back on, and let's see what happens. I'm gonna pray that things work out perfectly.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me.
It was a great show with Dr. Tre. He will be back on Live Your True Life Perspectives right after all this is done. On the back end of here, we can have a great conversation again. And, these are just thoughts to think about. I know a lot of you are feeling apathetic to the situation. A lot of you are feeling like you're not heard. You might feel like, well, it just seems like everything you say is going on deaf ears. Well, if we can get some new folks in there, if we can get some people that really care about what we care about, just to listen, just to begin the conversation, we can make changes on this planet. We can make changes where we are. And that's what's powerful. So I hope that the show has resonated with you. Please share it with your family and friends, and anyone that also needs to be motivated and pushed to believe in their own value, because that's exactly what Dr. Tre is doing. He's pushed himself, he's motivated himself, and he's doing amazing work just like you are. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.